Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome again to another episode. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are currently listening. I hope you are well and are excited to hear about the topic that we are going to be discussing today. The topic that we are going to discuss is about learning through trial and error and being reflective in your coaching practice. To help discuss this topic, I'm very happy to be joined by Coach Cecilio Gomez. Coach, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Coach Hernandez. How are you?
Doing all right. A little hot in the summer, but other than that, I'm doing quite okay. I'm excited to discuss this topic about reflection and about learning through trial and error because great coaches, as we all know, are always looking to get better. And sometimes we put ourselves in positions where we see these great coaches, and once they've made it, we sometimes forget that that was a long journey for them to get to where they got to. So I think that this will be a fun topic to discuss. But before we get into that topic, like I like to do with all of my guests, Coach, is I want to make sure that I give you the time to discuss your basketball journey, what your experience was with basketball, where coaching has taken you, and where you're currently at right now. So go ahead, Coach, with your journey.
Yeah, so born and raised in New York City. I was born in the Bronx, lived here, for most of my life. I also lived a little bit in the suburbs. My journey is kind of unique because I didn't have the playing experience that a lot of other coaches had. I did play, but it was like sparingly, here and there. One of the reasons, and I'm sure you're a teacher as well, why I decided to get into becoming a teacher and a coach is to kind of be the teacher coach that I never had growing up. So, for example, I went to a private school from the third grade on. PE teachers in private school, wasn't a lot of teaching going on, more the teacher that would roll the ball out. So to me, being a teacher, being a coach, I really take a lot of pride in going over skills and being a teacher. And not having that growing up definitely was a reason, just a small part in kind of my lack of playing experience. But, playing growing up, I was more of a defensive guy more than anything. I really couldn't do much defensively. So I always tried. I always played hard. And growing up, my family was into baseball, so I was more a baseball fan. But at Manhattan College, I worked as a manager for the basketball team, Go Jaspers, Manhattan Jaspers. And, while there, I just, really my love of basketball started to kind of take kind of precedent over baseball a little bit more. And that's kind of how I decided to pursue my master's, become a PE teacher and a basketball coach.
Well, I agree with you, and kind of coming from a baseball family. My parents are huge into baseball. They probably wonder why I even got into basketball or why I even did basketball, and that was my thing. But I really like that you had on the forefront of your mind in your answer about being a teacher and understanding how important it is to teaching the game and wanting to give back in that sense. As a teacher myself, I totally relate to that. And one of the things that you touched on and you mentioned was about not necessarily having the most formal experience playing or the most just experience really in general, but becoming a coach was still something that was really important to you. So what was the biggest adjustment that you found you had to make, or what were some of the toughest parts of the game that you had to learn once you decided to formally go into it in a coaching capacity?
It's kind of ironic. When I got started first coaching fifth grade boys and fifth grade girls. That's kind of an age level where there's, more about skill development. Mm-hmm. There wasn't much of an adjustment there. It was, just teach skills, and it was kind of awesome there. Moving up, I coached eighth grade girls for a year. Same kind of similar scenario. It was more with skill work, and skills is very important, especially for the youth levels. It wasn't until I got to the place I'm at now, Norman Thomas High School in Manhattan, and coaching high school boys. And now the focus is on winning. A little bit on high school JV, definitely high school varsity. You know, varsity is all about kind of getting wins, and the community gets rallied around wins. And it's the adjustment I'm seeing is what am I going to do in terms of strategies from a game management perspective. You know, team is playing a 2-3. How am I going to counteract that? 1-2-2. In New York City, they play a lot of zone.
Yeah.
Probably a little too much for my liking.
Yeah.
So, how are we going to counteract different zones? How are you going to counteract different presses? So that to me is probably the biggest adjustment and the toughest thing for me to have to learn about the game. But I mean, if you're committed as a coach and you're constantly reflecting, you can accomplish it. And I'm always reflecting. I'm always trying to find ways to get better, always find ways to be a better teacher for my guys. And, thankfully, I've been able to make a couple of adjustments this past year. Norman Thomas had its most successful season since 1982. We ended up making the Sweet 16, and it was the first winning year since 2013. So, I've been able to make a little bit of adjustments here and there, and I'm looking forward to continuing development as a coach.
Well, something that you said that resonated with me was you talked about how you started with the primary grades and then the eighth grades, and I think for a lot of coaches, I think that's important to hear that you probably know a lot more about the game than you think you do, especially if you're going to be coaching it at like a younger level or even maybe at a middle school level, depending on where you're at. And so, if you're a little bit worried about your like real formal experience and being great at all of these things, if you start at the primary and those younger levels, I feel like it's not that big of a deal. But then, like you said, once you get to high school, it becomes a little bit more. So quick question: were you just sort of, when you got into your current position, were you sort of like thrown in the fire and just told like figure it out? Were you able to have people who were kind of guiding you along the way, who kind of knew that you were kind of learning on your way? What was that like?
I was kind of thrown in the fire, so to speak. But on the other hand, I'm also the type of guy, like I soak up everything like a sponge, and I'm always looking to get better. And I feel as a coach, regardless of playing experience, you always want to try to seek out ways to get better. So I sought out, there was in the way New York City schools works is we have in my building 3 small public schools and a charter school. So there's 4 schools inside one building, and we come together to form the Norman Thomas campus team. So it just so happened the charter school had a coach, Coach Merrill Davis, who used to coach, has been a coach for like 20, 25 years in New York City. So I sought him out and I started asking him questions. And to this day, I still ask him questions. Same thing, the year that I got there, I was first the JV coach. And it just so happened that that was the last year of the varsity coach. So to this day, I still talk to the varsity coach. He left after that year, and I got moved up to varsity. But to this day, anytime I have a question, I'm not afraid to go and reach out. And I feel as coaches, we can't be afraid to reach out. We got to seek people and try to make conversation and see if we could piggyback off each other and get ideas.
Well, I really like that you mentioned about staying in contact and having that sort of mentorship and having that conversation that you're still able to have. I feel that one of the things, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this too, that some coaches struggle with is when they get that new job or they get that new position, they feel like they really have to blow everything up or they have to change a lot of what was already there. But hopefully, if you are going to take a new spot, there may have been good coaches there that left for not a bad reason. They just left for whatever reason, and you can still be in contact with them. And maybe there are some things that were still in place that you liked at that school and that you wanted to keep there. I wanted to ask you that too, really quickly. When you took this position, were there things that were already in place that you really liked and you wanted to keep, and you're like, this is already working, or there's this system or this off the court thing that they do, and I'm like, this is great, I'm going to still use this in this role?
In my school, no, not
Okay.
so much. My program is really being built from the ground up. They had 4 or 5 really bad years, so I'm building everything. The mentality of the players, the mindset, which is another adjustment
Yeah.
coach make, I feel, because it's not just how you know, but you also got to deal with the players, motivating them, their mentality, their mind, really making them want to win, especially at the high school level. So it was a complete rebuild from the ground up. I did, ironically, kind of piggyback also from the baseball coach, because he had a good reputation, a good winning reputation. So I would kind of see what he would do, see his workouts, and I'm like, oh, I like that. So ironically, I took some of the workout ideas from the baseball coach to try and implement in my program.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. If there's a coach who's doing well or is successful at the school that you're working at, there's
Yeah.
probably things that can translate with the population of kids you're going to work at, because it's the same school. So it's probably the same type of kids or a similar type of kids. So that's great. You know, reach out to baseball coach, reach out to the other coaches at your school. And I think another thing too that happens with that is that the players and the school itself kind of notices when the coaches are working together, and like everybody's kind of helping each other out. And you know, the baseball coach is helping the basketball's coach helping baseball, and it kind of builds that community. And that's really cool that you're able to do that. And yeah, as coaches, we're all working together, so definitely reach out to your coaches at other sports that coach other sports at your school. I think that's awesome. So
Yeah.
when you started this journey, whether we're going to refer to at the very beginning or now at the current school that you're at, as you know, as all coaches do, there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of mistakes that need to be made along the way in order for us to get even a little bit better. So what was that experience of trial and error for you? Were there things that you tried when you first started coaching and then you were like, whoa, that isn't going to work, and you had to change since then? What were those growing pains that you had to go through as you were beginning your coaching career and kind of at your coaching career right now?
I think for me, it's finding different ways of teaching, um, kind of what I want. And also for me, it's trial and error in terms of, okay, what strategy do I want to implement? So do I want to I've always loved man-to-man defense. Um, Kids know zone. So I kind of reluctantly, like, okay, let me do zone. But, you know, what man-to-man defense can I teach and how can I teach it? So the trial and error for me is finding that right strategy, finding the right way, and in my opinion, finding the right way to teach it. I'll give an example. I'm a big fan of positionless basketball, which a lot of people are big fans of.
Yep.
The trick is, I'm going to teach this to my athletes, to my ball players. You know, there's so many different ways of teaching it. One way I learned it was positionless basketball using the names of fast break positions instead of the traditional 5. So you have an inbounder, an outlet, 2 wings, a rim runner. I think those are the 5. Outlet, runner, wings, and I'm missing one. I apologize.
You're good. I get the idea though. Keep going.
But yeah, you're using the names of the fast break positions,
Yeah.
and then so I taught that 1 year. Then I'm watching NBA TV, which is what was at the forefront of this. And instead of what they did, they put 3 categories: guards, wings, bigs. So I've done that, and then also I read an article in another year that instead of guards, wings, bigs, they just gave people roles, like you're a playmaker or you're a ball mover, pass the ball, space out. They gave roles for offense and defense. So there's different ways of teaching it. And for me, I just trial and error was, which way am I going to use to best teach to my kids? Now what I've learned, probably the simplest way, is positionless basketball is a concept for the offensive end, but you don't get rid of the 5 positions, if that makes sense. You keep the point guard, the shooting guard, the small forward, the power forward, the center. But what you do is you work on skills and making sure that all 5 guys can handle it, can pass it, can rebound, can do everything. And positionless basketball is more an offensive concept to teach within the flow of your offense. So, that to me is trial and error. And as you could probably tell, I'm always reflecting. I think after every practice, and I think that's so important for coaches, is whether it's every practice or once a week, take some time and just reflect. Just reflect on what you're doing. Am I teaching this the best? Am I the best possible coach for my athletes? And how can I make this better?
So there's a couple little additional questions that I had with that, but I want to get to the reflection part because it looks different for everybody. So when you go for your process of reflection, what does that look like to you? Do you do it right after practice? Do you do it when you're like, give yourself a little bit of time? Like, what's your process for reflecting and thinking about how things are going?
I'm crazy. I'm always thinking about basketball. So as soon as practice is over, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, what did I do that, okay today? First off, what did the players learn? What do I feel they seem to grasp? What can I do better? So as soon as practice is over, I'm looking at my practice plan and I'm thinking, I'm reflecting on how it went and what I could do better.
Right. So you're just in like right away, like I'm always thinking, yeah, I agree. Like you're always thinking about basketball, and especially after that practice, you can probably be like, oh, that didn't go well, or then some cases like, oh, this did really go well. Make sure that I keep doing that and make sure I implement that. So, yeah, I think we're always in that process of constantly reflecting and always thinking. But sometimes it's best to do it when it's fresh in your mind and you remember how you felt trying to coach or trying to teach that drill. So
Exactly.
yeah, it makes sense to me. Going back to the idea of this positionless basketball, and you kind of mentioned the thing about the different positions and different roles, talking about the outlets, the rim runners, and then the kind of shift to the guards and the wings and things of that nature. Did you have to like sell that terminology to your kids? Did your kids buy into that right away, or is there a process involved with that too?
My first year on JV, there wasn't much selling because I think the kids, Norman Thomas has been losing for so long, even on both JV and varsity, that the kids just wanted something fresh, something new. And a lot of them bought in, and then we were having success too. So when you have success,
Yeah.
ways are not hard to figure out. Oh, this is working. Let's buy in. So there wasn't too much. The varsity level, it took a little bit of time. And I had this issue, which I'm sure a lot of coaches that say they want to get into positionless basketball get. The center that wants to be a guard. That was the issue I had my first year. Was a couple of big guys that wanted to dribble, wanted to be a guard so bad. So that was the part where the buy-in wasn't totally there. But just little by little, trying to refine how I teach it. Eventually, they bought in, and more importantly, they also bought into the winning culture as well, the winning mindset.
And so I'm glad that you did mention this too, along with this process of trial and error, how you were able to make some pretty good adjustments and the school was able to make some pretty good gains in the win column. And so success kind of allows everybody to maybe buy into something a little bit more. Do you think that transition into going into positionless basketball was like the biggest effect on that change to turn things around, or do you think or was there something else you think that might have been bigger than that? I'm just curious what you think was the biggest factor that have kind of led to that turnaround that you've had.
I think positionless basketball was part of it, to be honest with you, because kids, they like that idea. They like the idea of, especially boys, they like that idea
Yeah.
of, oh, offensively, positionless, we're going to have some freedom. We're going to be able to, just pass, cut, just play and move. That's another part of my journey is I got to do a better job teaching motion offense. Because if I'm going to be a position coach, a big part of that is motion offense. And really effectively moving the ball around and passing and cutting and doing all those little things. So yeah, I definitely do think positionless basketball was a part of it. I think kids wanted to come and give a shot in playing for me because they were like, oh, okay, he's going to allow us a little bit of freedom on the offensive end. The second part also is I was looking for kids that play defense. And I don't know if you heard the reputation of New York City kids.
Uh-huh.
New York City are not great defenders. So which that's been another battle. We could probably do a topic on a separate podcast just on getting kids to buy in defensively. But I would say, yeah, positionless basketball and defense were the two big selling points for me.
So I'm glad you brought back defense, because that was an additional question that I wanted to ask you. You mentioned at the beginning about how you think that there might be too much zone defense being played in New York. Do you think that that's part of the reason why defense isn't really that emphasized, that these coaches that you see are just putting people in a zone and just kind of letting them do that rather than having to hunker down and like guard man to man?
I might even go back to this, to the youth level, because a lot of kids, at least out here, they're learning zone in elementary, middle school. So now they're not, in my opinion, they're not being developed the right way to guard men, and they're not being developed to be in a stance, and they're not trained to be in a stance, to move their feet side to side. And if we try to play man, I got kids that they reach a lot, and they tend to pick up fouls. And then what happens with my teams the last couple of years, we pick up fouls, we have to go zone. But then another thing I noticed, which is ironic, they're learning zone from a young age, and they don't fully understand zone as well. Like, at least out here, a lot of kids gamble a lot and will leave their spots in the zone. And they've been playing it since they were young. So, yeah, I feel youth coaches need to teach kids the right way to play ball, which is guard up a man and teach them those fundamental aspects. Zone, high schools can play zone, colleges can play zone. But at the youth levels, we need to get back to teaching them man and those fundamentals. I love what USA Basketball is doing in trying to promote that in the game.
Well, I don't get too strongly opinionated on many things, but I wholeheartedly agree with you on the fact that the youth level, like we have to get rid of this zone stuff. I understand that. Oh, if we put a zone, this 6-year-old isn't going to be able to shoot a 3 and we'll leave him open. Well, great, but what are we doing? is that really what we're trying to emphasize here? And another thing that I think coaches, a lot of them understand this, and I think more and more are starting to get it, like you said, with the different things that are being put in place to emphasize man, is that you can't really do a zone really well unless you have good man-to-man principles to begin with. You can't. The zone is complicated in that you have to be good with man-to-man, you have to be good with your communication, you have to be solid defensively with your man-to-man principles for the zone to even work. So absolutely, I agree. And then, like you said, you get these instances where people are playing defense with their hands, trying to reach rather than move. And so that's interesting. Now that you got me on this a little bit, what was it easy still though to sell defense if it's something that they really hadn't been accustomed to trying too hard on? Was there a certain defensive scheme you put in that got them like excited and ready to go and take pride in their defense?
Ironically, and I haven't done too much of it, but it's definitely through trial and error, I feel kind of where I want to go as a coach. The pack line defense, to me, was the one that kind of sold it a little bit because, and the way I did it at the beginning was kind of how a lot of people learn it with the pack line defense. Listen, this is man-to-man defense, but if you do it right, if you do it effectively, it looks like zone. So the pack line defense kind of, to me helped out. It looks really good when you're operating it the right way. Mm-hmm. And I think kids started to like playing defense, at least for me, because, they're high school kids.
Yep.
And they like that, the ability to get steals and get out and run on the fast break. So kind of promoting that way, hey, defend, get a steal, let's get out and run. Let's get out and run. And they like that idea as well, especially high school boys on a varsity team. And I had a couple of guys last year that, thankful for me, they can get up there and dunk it. So they like that idea. So, yeah, I think that's the part of defense, for me anyway, I found was a big selling point as well.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned about the steals and the turnovers, because it seems like an easy sell in the sense of, hey, we do this on defense, we're going to be able to get back on offense a lot quicker. If we can create these turnovers, create steals, and create this chaos and get out there and run. And I think it does, like you said, kind of come down to the way that you sell it. And if you have the enthusiasm and if you believe in it, and it sounds like from your experience, if you have kids who traditionally haven't been like seeing a lot of success, they're probably going to be pretty open to trying something new. Be like, well, what do we have to lose? We might as well go ahead and try something new. So absolutely love the way that you kind of sold it and kind of showed them like, here's how your defense can lead into offense. Everyone loves scoring. So go ahead.
One thing about trial and error, from my perspective, is, and I'm gonna sound like a millennial right now, I get, but is impatience, right? I'm a varsity coach. I understand that varsity, at that level, is there skill development? Yes, but obviously the focus, and boys want to win. And when a defense does not go the right way, right away, we're all thinking, oh, we got to switch defenses. We got to do something. And so in the past, trial and error, I wasn't always committed to my own strategies at times, which is a big no-no for coaches. I think everybody knows that. But on the other hand, I also found out as a result of the last season is I know the pack line defense works. I didn't run it as much last year, and that's probably why we got eliminated in the playoffs, because I feel if I would have ran it more, we probably would have gone further. But now I know for next year, this is what I want. So trial and error, I feel like in my journey, I found the strategies that, I want to implement moving forward. And I now see the type of coach that I want to be moving forward.
Well, absolutely, with the trial and error part where you have to try out different things and fail and make mistakes in different things, but eventually you're going to find something that you either believe in or you're going to find something that works. And when you believe that, you do, like you said, you have to stick with it, because if you're willing to just throw out everything after a game or after a half, that either shows that you're not believing in yourself as a coach or you're not believing in the players. And it just stick with what you believe and figure out. And I think this is probably what you've done too, correct me if I'm wrong, but since you do believe in pack line, is maybe it doesn't always necessarily work like the way that you wanted to at first, but then you get better at it, you learn more things about it, you get better at it, but it starts from you believing in it, correct?
100% correct. Yep.
Right. So once you believe in it and you think it's going to work, then just continually work to get better at it. But if you keep changing it all the time, then you're never really going to get better at anything, right? So with trial and error, one of the best ways to maybe minimize, we're still going to make mistakes, but maybe one of the better ways to minimize making as many mistakes is to have a mentor and have somebody who's kind of been there and kind of gone through the process and gone through the steps. So how have your coaching mentors been able to help you, and why do younger coaches need one or more? And also, why should veteran coaches with experience, why should they actively be trying to mentor younger coaches? So a few parts there to that one.
Yeah, with my mentors, I'm just always seeking them out. Most of the time, it's not so much defensively. I'm seeking them out on ways to help me offensively. Okay, there's this 1-2-1-1 press or 2-2-1 press. Like, coach, my team is struggling. What am I doing wrong, and how I'm teaching it? So, they help me out a lot with that, and they'll give me ideas. Younger coaches, man, I definitely feel you should find some veteran coach to lean on, and just seek advice. We as young coaches, we tend to get this false mindset like, oh, I know everything, and I know what I'm doing. I know how to teach it, and I'm relying on playing experience or past experience. We need those veteran coaches. I mean, they've been around, and so young coaches, let's just humble ourselves and let's just talk and piggyback. And you may not like what they have to say at the beginning. They say the truth hurts sometimes.
Uh-huh.
In your development as a coach, those guys or girls will help you. I firmly believe that the veteran coaches, they will help you. And sometimes it might be a rival coach in your own conference. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but if a veteran coach in your conference is willing to talk to you and give you advice, it's not going to hurt you to listen and see if you can maybe get an idea or two from him or her.
It's refreshing to hear that perspective and hear that that's something that you value, because again, I've emphasized this a couple times on some previous episodes, that if our ultimate goal is to get these girls and these boys to get better and be better, then we as coaches need to always be looking to get better as well. And sometimes, as you said, the truth hurts, and a coach will say something to me and be like, I don't know what this zone looked like or what you were doing, but I never felt that they were attacking me as a person. They weren't saying that there was anything wrong with me
Right.
on a personal level. It was just the coaching part. And if you can separate those two, which it sounds like you did, it's going to help you achieve a lot more success. With that, is there any like one particular like bit of advice, or was there something that maybe like a coach said, or just like something that you learned from a coach, like one thing that like has always stuck with you and has always kind of been on your mind?
Um,
Kind of
not
put you on I kind of put you on the spot with
yeah,
that one, I know.
not too much in terms of something that I learned, but I'm just always appreciative with the positive feedback
Hmm.
from veteran coaches,
Hmm.
especially my first year. My first year coaching varsity was a shell shock because I'm coming off a year where I was the JV coach. We won 9 games. It was the first winning season of any level in like 4 years. We made playoffs. I get to varsity and I'm confident. And I'm young, but I'm confident. I'm like, oh yeah, they're gonna buy in a little bit easier now. We had a winning year. And they didn't. They didn't. It wasn't a good team. They didn't fully buy in. And we just kept getting annihilated. And I'll never forget the veteran coaches, a couple of them, coming to me and saying, listen, you are rebuilding this program. You're rebuilding a new culture, a new mindset. You got to take your time. And this might be something I guess I could say is he told me the story of how he started out coaching at a local high school in Brooklyn, Thomas Jefferson High School. And when he was there, they were a struggling team. And anybody from New York knows that today Thomas Jefferson is a powerhouse. Every year they compete for a city championship. So he told me the story. Listen, you don't have to feel too bad or too upset. I get it. You want to win, but you're completely rebuilding the culture. Don't be so hard on yourself and realize that it's a process that's going to take time. And for me, I always feel like that's something that always stuck with me. And I'm glad he did that.
And I am too, because I think for coaches that have been there for a while and they've been successful like this coach was, I think they like to see coaches stick with this profession. They don't like to see like a revolving door every year where it's like, oh, there's a new coach. It's probably helpful and refreshing to see that there are coaches like yourself and others who are committed to the rebuilding process, and kind of putting those years in and putting that time in, rather than just having there be a new coach that goes in every single year. So I'm sure, it's that respect probably definitely goes both ways. Um, to shift gears a little bit, one of the things that is a lot of trial and error. I know with me in particular, I'm certainly am not great at this, and I'm always looking to get better. Is in practices, or either whether it's in practicing itself or just maybe game management or things like that. Is there any particular area that you are still like looking to change, where you think that you really haven't gotten your footing yet? It sounds like you're happy with pack line, but are there other things that you're not going to change at all on or off the court? It's kind of like a diagnosis of like where you're at right now. What's still going to be changed? What are you happy with, but maybe also might still change? What's your diagnosis with things so far?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'm
Hmm.
listening is staying safe. But I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this. I've always been committed to being, and again, this goes back to me being a kid and not always having that teacher that rolled the ball out instead of teaching. I've always been committed to trying to be that complete coach for my basketball players. So I write my practice plan. I'm like, I'm gonna stick through the practice plan. I want to give them equal time on defense. But I also want to give them time to work on offense. And yeah, all aspects of the game is important. But one thing I want to do differently is if something's not going right, don't go away from it until it is exactly how you want it to look. And I feel I've made that error the last 3, 4 years. And if something looks okay, but it's not exactly how I want it to look, I'm like, all right, I'll move on and work on something else. And I feel that's another mistake a lot of young coaches can do. So I definitely want to do that. I mentioned about the pack line defense. My mindset is, listen, I'm going to write my practice plan, but if my players next year are not fully giving me what I want, it's okay to cut out offense a little bit and work, a little bit more on that side of things until it looks the way I want it to look. Um, if that makes any sort of sense. And of course, that's not ideal for a coach. I get that. I don't think any coach would ever want to do that. But I really feel like, if it's something you believe in, you got to stick with it and keep teaching it until it's what you want. That might, involve cutting out some things from your practice plan.
Well, I have personal experience in what you said with my own practices, and something that you said that made me think back to something I did was, you mentioned the idea of just settling kind of for okay. I mean, I've done that. I remember doing a practice and we were doing our press and we got to some areas of trapping and it was okay. Like the footwork probably could have been better and the communication probably could have been better, but it was okay. And I just moved on. And then I saw it in a game and I was like, this is terrible. Well, yeah, of course it was terrible because it wasn't that good in practice to begin with.
Right.
So I definitely agree. Was there some things that you think that you did just settle for as being okay that you now like don't at all? I know we want to say we don't settle for anything to be okay, but were there a couple areas in particular where maybe you're a little bit more lax, like I was with my trapping, where now is you're like, no way, we're gonna make sure we get this right?
Yeah. Well, for me, you know, offense has always been like a challenge with me. I've always considered myself more defense.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, why I try in the past, I settled for the okay, whether it's half court defense or trapping defense, because I want my guys to have some time on offense. But offense is definitely something that I'm always trying to learn a little bit more of. And what I find out here in New York City, I don't know about anywhere else, is kids say they want to run motion. So I'm like, all right, let's do motion. But they don't know how to run motion at all. And I've settled for, you know, kids kind of standing around doing nothing, and like iso ball, and New York City loves doing iso ball. They love doing one-on-one. So that's definitely something that I want to cut out completely from my coaching philosophies. I definitely want to get better at teaching motion offense.
Well, I want to kind of dive a little bit more into that because as you mentioned about this like one-on-one like ISO mentality, like to me, I think of that if I think of New York basketball, I think of like the one-on-one blacktop, Rutgers Park type stuff. But as you're building a team, was that was that hard for you to kind of have them work together as a team? Were there things you maybe had to do like off the court to kind of bond them, or are they willing to work with each other and pass around and keep the movement going to kind of get away from that ISO type basketball? Was that an easy buy-in for them to work with each other and support each other in that way?
Oh no, for New York City kids, it's never an easy, never an easy buying. My first year, like I said, we were horrible, and you know we did not do a great job. And what's ironic is there would be moments where we did move the ball well and we got great shots, and then suddenly and I would tell them, "Hey, you're doing a great job, keep it up." And suddenly it's like it goes in one ear, out the other. They forget about it and go back to their old ways. So that old saying, old habits die hard. But my second year on the varsity level, I did do more like team building stuff to try and get them to work together. This past season, you know, not so much team building stuff off the court, but this past year I was lucky that I got a lot of seniors, 7 seniors. And by senior year, they want to win because their last year and they realize this is the last shot to impress a college team. And the previous 2 years I've been saying, listen, if you want to get to the next level, they're not going to be impressed with a losing team. You got to show them that you're a winner and you got to go out there and get wins and play the right way. And I found last year was probably the best year that we moved the ball and looked to get people, look to get people involved. We didn't do it all the time. So again, it's old habits die hard, especially out here in New York. But at least for my program, it is heading in the right direction.
Well, that's something that's super important is being able to speak to what's going to connect with your players. And that message you said about, hey, this is it. This is your senior year. Like, if you want to do anything beyond this, here's what needs to happen. It is probably definitely going to resonate with them. And it sounds like to me, you feel like you are making strides with like changing culture and kind of changing what it means to be a member of your basketball team. Where am I correct in saying that people and athletes who are trying out for your team understand that ISO stuff isn't going to cut it?
Yeah, I think they understand now. More than anything, I think the ISO stuff is going to take me a little bit more time, just a little bit, because it is New York. Said it yourself. When you hear ISO, the first place you think of is New York City. So that's something that we have to deal with out here. But I do think when kids come out, they do know I'm looking for defense. I'm looking for team guys. And I'm looking for guys with that winning mentality that's going to do anything to get wins. And I do think that has been laid down in my culture over here.
And that's something that they can buy into, and that's something that, if they want to be successful, that's an easy message to sell is you do this, you're going to see success. You're going to be successful if that's something that you do. And it may not look the way that like every other team does it, but this is the way that we do it. And this is what we believe in. And so I'm also curious, just because I'm so fascinated on this defensive concept you brought up, are you facing a lot of teams in New York that will just have these like ISO one-on-one plays where it's just do what you want, even on that organized level in like the high school games you're coaching against?
I think at the New York City level, it's kind of weird. You got a combination of kids that don't have great skill. But yeah, typically you'll have the best player try to do that ISO, I'm the man, I want to try to get mine, to kind of have that ego into it. Some of the better teams, no. Some of the better teams, they move the ball, and that's why they're some of the better teams. And I put my team last year against some teams out in Jersey with neighbors out of state. And the way they played was way different. I even had my team play some teams from upstate New York. And I'm telling my kids, like, listen, you guys are more athletic than the kids in upstate New York. Those kids, look at how they play. Look at how they move the ball with each other. Look at how they, pass, they cut, they do all those little things. there's one team in our conference that doesn't do iso ball. They more play that team style of basketball. But unfortunately, yeah, a lot of teams in New York they rely on that, on the isos.
Well, then that brings a good point and a kind of a good teaching moment for some coaches listening, that if you have in your area this culture, this one particular style of play that all of your players are used to because that's all they've kind of seen, is do what you did and take them out to different states if you can, take them out to different parts of your state if you can, and let them know, like, what you see in your bubble isn't necessarily what's happening elsewhere. Like, here's what good basketball looks like this way and another way, and just sort of getting them out of like their kind of narrow-minded focus that they might have sometime. And it's also great that you mentioned that, you know, the most successful teams are the ones making, or the ones using movement, the ones who are doing that positionless basketball and have constant motion. So again, as it seems like you're doing, you're kind of building this culture of like, here's what it needs to take to be successful, because not only do I believe it works, but if you look at the most successful teams in our city, this is what they're doing too. So absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Coach, what I want to do to kind of wrap up here is I want to have you give us a coaching moment that you've had throughout your coaching journey, something that you think is a moment that others might be able to learn from.
Um, for me, it actually has nothing to do with on the court. Coaching moment for me is, you know, off the court, just the type of young men that I've been fortunate to coach and help develop. And I'm very proud of the fact that I've helped them develop not only as players, but into outstanding young men. So I just shouted out the class of 2020 on social media. And I wish them the best of luck. And I know they had a very rough ending to their school year. But I just said how much I appreciated them. And one kid wrote me back and he said how he appreciates me so much as a coach for making him into the player that he is today. And he kind of credited me for being a reason why he stuck it out in high school for all 4 years. And he mentioned how I was the first coach that gave him the opportunity to play. And, you know, whereas the other coaches cut him. So to me, that's what it's all about. And that's a coaching moment that young man, whether he likes it or not, he just gave me a coaching moment that is invaluable and will last. For me, it's probably bigger than any championship I will ever win. And hopefully I'll get to win a few in my coaching career. But that to me is what coaching is all about at the end of the day.
And it sounds like to me that player is going to remember that in the way that you made him feel and the relationship he built with you far more than he's ever going to like think of you as an X's and O's coach or anything that happened on the court, right? The impact that we have with our players is just so far beyond basketball. And it sounds like you were able to teach that kid so much more than the game itself, and life lessons that he's gonna be able to take far beyond, you know, his playing days. And so yeah, that's what it's all about. And then to wrap up here, Coach, I always love to give my coaches the 60-second soapbox where the floor is theirs to give their final thought, to get a closing moment or an idea that you didn't get to touch on. The floor is yours, Coach. The soapbox is yours. Go ahead.
You know, to all the coaches out there, especially the young ones, be patient. Especially if you're at the high school level and you're like me taking over a program that doesn't have a lot of wins. Be patient. Don't be afraid of trial and error, which I hope that's what me and Coach Hernandez promoted through this podcast today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to try stuff out and make mistakes, and because you're going to, whether you like it or not. Seek out veteran coaches for help in turning things around, but ultimately just be patient. Find through trial and error what you want, what you believe in, and once you find that, you know, you'll get there and you will turn things around. This past season, we had our first winning season. During that year, I was trialing. I still was doing trial and error this past. But ironically, during this past year, I realized what I want to take with my team moving forward. And so all I want to say to all coaches, especially the young ones, just be patient and keep trusting the process, and more importantly, trust yourself.
Great. It's, great closing words there. It is a process. It is a journey. That's why we call this our coaching journey. So be patient. And I love, again, that you mentioned seek out those mentors. So many people are willing to give back and help teach and give their knowledge to you. So that's awesome. Well, this is great. There's so much useful stuff for a new coach to think about, and also for veteran coaches who are reflecting on their journey and the changes that they made along the way. So this is great for all types of coaches. Coach, I want to thank you once again for joining us. It was a pleasure hearing from you. Good luck this season.
Thank you so much, Coach Hernandez. Same thing with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, this was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.